Officer, who's in charge here? Guest, murmuring. It's a wedding, man. What's the problem? Officer, louder. Who's responsible? The groom walks forward slowly. His steps are measured, deliberate. Groom, that would be me. What's the issue? The officer studies him. His eyes don't see a groom yet. They see a black man standing before him, in a suit, surrounded by people holding up phones. Officer, we got a call. Report of disturbance. Possible unlawful gathering. Gasps ripple through the guests. Bride, softly, to no one in particular. Disturbance? It's my wedding. The groom doesn't flinch. Groom, we're here celebrating. A wedding. My wedding. That's all. The officer glances past him, scanning the crowd, looking for evidence of chaos that isn't there. Neighbor. From across the fence, shouting, I told you. They're blocking traffic, they're making noise, it's out of control. Every head turns. The neighbor's face is red, her arms folded across her chest. She clutches her phone like a weapon she already fired. Guest, snapping. Out of control? It's music and vows. You call the cops for that? Neighbor, I don't care who it is, it's a disturbance. Bride, breaking, voice trembling. Why can't you just let us be happy for one day? The officer's eyes flicker between them, between a trembling bride and a neighbor drowning in her own certainty. Officer, flatly, ma'am, please step back. The neighbor huffs but doesn't move. The groom steps forward again, closer to the officer now. Groom, you've seen for yourself. Do you see any disturbance here? Do you see harm? Officer, hesitant. No, but the call was made. We had to respond. Groom, and now that you have? The officer doesn't answer right away. He adjusts his belt, glances at the cameras, recording him from every angle. Guest, cutting in. This is harassment. That's what this is. Neighbor, yelling back. Don't twist it. I was worried. Bride, suddenly, fierce through tears. Worried about what? Are you able to see us? The neighbor's mouth opens, then shuts. The officer clears his throat. Officer, quieter now. Look, maybe this is a misunderstanding. Just keep it down, okay? Groom, steadily. There was no misunderstanding. There was a choice. A choice. To turn joy into suspicion. The bride reaches for his hand, squeezing. Guests murmur their agreement, their anger, their shame for even needing to prove the obvious. Guest, to the neighbor. Low but cutting. You couldn't stand to see them happy. That's all this was. The neighbor finally looks around. Dozens of eyes on her. Phone still pointed. For the first time, her voice shakes. Neighbor, I didn't mean for it to. Bride, interrupting, soft but sharp. Yes, you did. Silence. The officer nods stiffly. Officer, I'll report it closed. He turns, walks back to his cruiser. The neighbor lingers, trapped between the fence and her shame, before slipping back inside her house. The music has not yet returned. The crowd is still frozen. The bride rests her head on her groom's shoulder, whispering so only he can hear. Bride, whisper. They tried to take this day from us. Groom, softly but firm. They can't. The band strikes a hesitant chord. Laughter returns in fragments, shaky but determined. The celebration continues, but now every smile carries weight, joy sharpened into defiance. The second cruiser pulls up before the first song dares to start again. Two officers step out. Their boots hit the pavement sharp, their hands resting close to their belts. Eyes sweep over the guests like searchlights, not looking for love, only for trouble. The bride grips her husband's hand tighter. He doesn't let go. Officer 1. Sir, keep your hands where I can see them. Groom, they're right here. I'm holding my wife's hand. Officer 2, then let go. The words cut the air. Guests shift uncomfortably. A child hides behind his mother. The groom stays still. Groom, steady. This is my wedding. I won't let go of her. A long pause. The officers exchange a glance. Irritation in one pair of eyes, hesitation in the other. Bride, quiet but firm. He's not a threat. He's my husband. Officer 1, ma'am, step aside. Bride snaps, I am with him. The crowd stirs. Phones rise higher. Guest from the back, why are you treating him like a suspect? Look around you, this is a wedding. The officers notice the cameras. Their shoulders stiffen. Officer 2, to Officer 1 low, they're filming. Officer 1 mutters back, doesn't matter, protocol. Groom, cutting in, calm. Tell me, what protocol demands you break a man from his bride on the day of his vows? No answer, just silence. The bride's voice shakes. Bride, please, look around. Do you see violence? Do you see crime? Officer 2, hesitant. No. Officer 1, sharper. A call was made. We respond to calls. Guest firm, then close it. You've seen what it is. The groom's calm grows heavier than shouting could. Groom, what you're doing right now, it's not about the call. It's about me. You've put me in the crosshairs for standing next to my wife. His voice doesn't rise, but the silence that follows makes every word echo. The neighbor's voice breaks from the fence, shaky but loud. Neighbor, you see? It is disorder, it's chaos. Guest snaps back. The only chaos is you. The only noise is your hate. The neighbor falters, lips trembling. The officers don't look at her. They're watching the groom. Officer 2, quieter now. Maybe we should step back. Officer 1, uncertain. We don't just walk away. Groom, measured, unwavering. Then say it plain. Say you saw. Nothing wrong here. Say it so everyone hears. Silence again. Eyes shift. Cameras stay pointed. Finally, Officer 2 nods, reluctant, almost invisible, but enough. Officer 2 low. I don't see a crime. The bride exhales, almost a sob. Bride. Softly, then let us be. The groom holds her hand tighter. He doesn't smile. He doesn't ease. He simply stands unbroken. The officers step back. A single move, but it feels larger than words. The neighbor shrinks behind her fence. The band still waits. The crowd is frozen. But in the silence, something stronger than music fills the air. The weight of dignity that refuses to bend. The air feels like it could snap. The officers stand stiff, still trying to anchor themselves in authority. The crowd waits, phones lifted, fingers trembling on record buttons. The bride's hand is damp in his, but he doesn't let go. Officer 1, sir, I need you to cooperate. Groom, quiet, measured, I already am. Officer 2, then state your name. The groom exhales once. Slow, heavy. Groom, my name is David Carter. No reaction yet. Just a name. He waits a moment longer, then adds each word deliberate. Groom. Mayor of this city. The silence lands like a stone in water. A ripple moves through the crowd, gasps, whispers, shifting feet. The phones tilt higher. The officers freeze, glancing at each other as though searching for instructions that aren't written in any manual. Bride. Tight whisper. Meant only for him. You shouldn't have to say that, not to be treated as human. Groom. Low, steady, I know. Guest, muttering loud enough to carry. Mayor Carter. They called the cops on the mayor. The crowd's energy changes, from fear to fury. From silence to something sharper. Officer 1, clearing throat, defensive. We respond to all calls the same way. Guest cuts him, sharp, the same way? You put the mayor in your sights before you even knew who he was. Phones capture every word. Livestream comments scroll in real time. Unbelievable. Racist. Neighbor exposed. This is the mayor? The neighbor peeks through her window. She doesn't step outside this time. Her face is pale, caught between shame and disbelief. Officer 2, uneasy, softer now. Sir, Mayor Carter. We didn't. No, Groom, interrupting, calm but unyielding. That's the point. You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with dignity. The words strike harder than shouting. Guests nod. Some clap once, quick and sharp, before stopping, letting the silence speak louder. Bride, quiet, to the officers. Do you know what you did to this day, to this memory? No one answers. Guest, from the left side, voice rising. This is history. You're on camera, every second of this. The officers shift uncomfortably. They don't reach for weapons now. They don't bark orders. They just stand, unraveling slowly in the lens of public witness. Officer 1, finally, will make a note. Report it as resolved. Groom, even quieter. No, you'll report it as what it was. A false call. A call made because a black man was seen celebrating in his own neighborhood. The neighbor at the window flinches. Her hand falls away from the curtain. Officer 2, nodding once. Yes, sir. The groom doesn't move. His stillness is heavier than any command. Bride, voice trembling but clear. Do you see it now? Do you see how quickly you turned our vows into suspicion? Her words break. Something in the air. The guests grow restless, not chaotic, not violent, but united in quiet outrage. The officers retreat one step, then another. The groom finally speaks again. Groom, you can leave now. They hesitate, then obey. Boots scrape the gravel as they return to their cruisers. Engines hum, lights flash once, then fade down the street. The crowd exhales together. The bride leans her head against his shoulder, her voice barely audible. Bride, they'll talk about this more than our vows. Groom, quiet, firm. Then let them. Let them see what they did. The neighbor's curtain twitches one last time before going still. Phones remain raised, screens glowing into the dusk, as if to remind the world that nothing will be buried this time. The wedding continues, but the laughter feels thinner, stretched across something fragile. The music plays softer now, like it knows it's being judged. Eyes glance toward fences, toward windows. Joy is present, but suspicion lingers with it. The bride wipes her cheek, though no one saw her cry. She looks out at the rows of houses, at the blinds half closed, at the shadows behind them. Bride, low, almost to herself. They don't want us here. A neighbor couple standing near the fence shift uneasily. The woman clears her throat. Neighbor woman, that's not fair. Not everyone feels that way. Bride, turning sharper than she intended. But someone did. Someone called. And the rest of you stayed quiet. Silence. The husband squeezes his wife's arm, but doesn't speak. Guest, from the back, voice bitter. This isn't about noise. It never was. The groom lays a hand gently over his bride's. Groom steady, calm. It's always been about belonging. The words hang heavy, undeniable. An older white man steps forward, adjusting his glasses, his face pale. Neighbor man. People talk, at the HOA meetings. They say things changed when families like yours moved in. Bride. Tight, controlled. Families like ours? He hesitates. Neighbor man, softer. Black families. The crowd stiffens. A few guests murmur in anger, but the bride raises her hand slightly, asking for silence. Bride, measured, every word clear. We bought this house. We pay the same taxes. We plant the same flowers. Do you really think belonging depends on color? The man drops his eyes. His wife looks away. Guest, cutting in. It does to some. They just won't say it out loud. The bride blinks, her jaw tight. Bride, whispers, voice cracking. That's what hurts. Not the call, the silence. The silence that says, they don't belong. The groom straightens, his voice steady, not raised. Groom, I am the mayor of this city. And still, in my own neighborhood, I'm treated as if I need permission to exist. Tell me if this can happen to me. What happens to those without a title? No one answers. The silence grows dense, pressing against every wall. The neighbor woman at the fence swallows hard. Neighbor woman, softly. We should have said something. We should have stopped it. The bride studies her, eyes red but fierce. Bride, words. After the fact don't erase what we felt tonight. You all let it happen. Her voice shakes but her composure doesn't fall. She is reclaiming space with each syllable. The man with glasses tries again, his voice smaller this time. Neighbor. Man, maybe. Maybe we didn't want conflict. Guest, cutting him, blunt. Silence is conflict. You just chose the safe side of it. The groom looks at his bride, then back at the neighbors. Groom, this neighborhood isn't yours to grant or deny. It belongs to everyone who calls it home, and we are home. The bride exhales, long and slow, as though letting go of something she carried too long. Bride, quiet, final. We belong here. Whether you accept it or not, no one argues. Not because they agree, but because they've been stripped of words. The band resumes softly. Guests sway, not as carefree as before, but with a new resolve. The bride leans against her husband's shoulder, eyes still wet but voice steadier. Bride, to him, barely audible. One day, I want to stop fighting to prove we deserve joy. Groom. Firm, whispering back. That's why we don't let them take it. The wedding is over, but the story refuses to end. Clips bounce from phone to phone. Shaky frames of uniforms, the neighbors shouting, the mayor's calm. By midnight, strangers are watching what was never meant for them. Guest 1, voice on a clip. You called the cops on a wedding? On the mayor's wedding? Neighbor, grainy audio. It was chaos. Guest 2, cutting her off. The only chaos is you. The frame freezes on her face mid-yell. Someone captions it. Karen of the year. The internet runs with it. The next morning, the groom sits at the dining table, scrolling. His bride leans against the counter, her phone buzzing non-stop. Bride. Reading flatly, look at this one. Imagine being so racist you call the cops on your own mayor. 800,000 likes. Her tone carries no victory, only exhaustion. Groom, steady. They'll laugh at her, but they'll never feel what we felt. She sets the phone down too hard. The sound echoes in the kitchen. Bride, they turned our fear into a punchline. He watches her, jaw tightening. Groom, mockery isn't justice. Across the street, curtains are drawn. The neighbor hasn't stepped outside. Her phone vibrates constantly, spilling over with messages she doesn't want to see. Neighbor's son, holding a tablet. Mom, you're everywhere. They know your name. She snatches the device. Headlines blur. Racist neighbor exposed. This is the mayor she called cops on. Her hand shakes. Neighbor, muttering, I didn't mean. Son, sharper this time. You did. You called. Her mouth opens, then shuts. No defense comes. In a downtown cafe. Strangers hunch over phones. Customer 1. That's our mayor. Can you believe it? His wedding. Customer 2, shaking. His head. What if he wasn't mayor? What if he was just another black man? The question lands heavy. Cups clink, but no one answers. At another table, 2 teenagers laugh at memes made from the clip. Teen 1. Look at her face frozen mid-scream. People are remixing it already. Teen 2, after a pause. Yeah, but it's not funny really. Not when you think about it. Their laughter fades without them meaning it to. Back at home, the bride scrolls again. Each swipe shows her own tear-streaked face, strangers captioning it for laughs or sympathy. Bride. Soft, almost to herself. They're laughing at me. The groom gently takes the phone from her hand. Groom, quiet but firm. Let them laugh. We know what it cost. Bride, voice cracking. But this memory, it's everywhere now. We'll never get it back. He doesn't argue. He just holds her hand tighter. The silence says enough. The neighbor's phone rings again. She ignores it, but the voicemail plays out loud anyway. Her sister's voice over speaker. "Mary, what did you do? You embarrassed all of us. The news is everywhere. You called the cops on the mayor's wedding? What were you thinking?" The neighbor slams the phone down. Her son doesn't flinch. "Son, quiet but cutting. They're right. You ruined us." She sinks lower in her chair. Neighbor, barely audible. "It was just a call." But even she doesn't believe it anymore. The following afternoon, news anchors replay the clips. One shakes his head, voice sharp. "Anchor, this wasn't just." One neighbor's poor judgment. "This is what suspicion looks like when it's aimed at black joy, even when that joy is wrapped in a wedding ring and a mayor's title." At City Hall, reporters swarm. Cameras flash, voices overlap. The mayor stands steady, his bride beside him. Reporter 1. "Mayor Carter, do you consider this incident racially motivated?" Reporter 2. "Will you press charges against the neighbor?" The mayor doesn't raise his voice. His words are calm, deliberate. "Groom, if this can happen to me, an elected mayor, what happens to those without a title, without cameras to record it?" The reporters fall silent for a beat. Even their pens stop scratching. His bride speaks next, her voice shaking but clear. "Bride, they turned our vows into suspicion. Do you know what that does to a person?" No one replies. Their silence is answer enough. Across the street, the neighbor watches the press conference from her couch. The split screen shows her photo next to the mayor's face. His calm is unshaken. Hers is frozen in shame. She whispers to no one. "Neighbor, why did I pick up the phone?" The screen doesn't answer. The world already has. The clips keep playing. The memes keep spreading. For millions, it's entertainment. For one family, it's humiliation. For another, it's a wound that refuses to close. The council chamber feels colder than the street ever did. Rows of seats packed with neighbors, reporters, and cameras. The mayor sits at the front table, suit pressed, jaw tight. His bride beside him, hands folded, knuckles pale. Across the aisle, the neighbor sits rigid, hair pulled back too tight. Her son avoiding every glance. A lawyer leans close to her, whispering. She nods too quickly, like the word defense could shield her from shame. The chairwoman clears her throat. "Chairwoman, we're here to address the complaint filed by Mayor Carter regarding a racially motivated emergency call." "Let's proceed." A civil rights attorney rises. His voice is calm, deliberate. "Attorney, the law is clear. False emergency calls are not accidents. They're abuses of public resources. And when those calls are rooted in bias, they're harassment. Plain and simple." The room hums with whispers. The attorney continues. "Attorney, this was not a burglary. Not a fight. Not a threat. It was a wedding. And yet, the police arrived with their hands hovering near their weapons. Why? Because a neighbor decided black joy was suspicious." The neighbor shifts in her seat, eyes flashing. "Neighbor, that's not fair. I was concerned. I thought." Attorney cuts her sharp. "Concerned about what? Music? Laughter? Or the sight of a black man in a suit surrounded by family?" She opens her mouth, then closes it again. Bride, whispering under her breath, "Say it. Just once. Say what you really saw." The groom lays a hand over hers, steadying. The neighbors. Lawyer clears his throat, stepping in. Neighbor's lawyer. "My client acted out of caution. We've all heard stories of gatherings getting out of control. She acted responsibly. A guest from the wedding, seated in the audience, can't hold back. Guest, standing, voice shaking. Responsible? You call it responsible to put guns in reach of men who didn't need to be there. You call it responsible to turn vows into danger?" The chamber stirs. Reporters scribble furiously. The groom finally speaks. His voice level but unyielding. Groom, I am the mayor of this city. I shouldn't have to reveal my title for officers to see my humanity. But that night proved it. My skin spoke louder than my name. A heavy silence spreads. Even the neighbor looks down for a moment. The chairwoman leans forward. Chairwoman. Mrs. Whitman, do you deny placing the call? The neighbor exhales shakily. Neighbor, no, I placed it. But I didn't mean for. Attorney, interrupting, firm. Intent doesn't erase impact. You called, you accused, and you endangered lives. Her face reddens. Her lawyer whispers frantically, but she barely hears him. The mayor's attorney continues. Attorney, we're asking this council to treat this for what it was, a misuse of emergency services, racially motivated harassment, and a violation of public trust. The neighbor grips the table edge. Her nails leave marks in the wood. Neighbor, defensive, almost shouting. I wasn't racist, I was scared. The bride turns her head, her voice soft but piercing. Bride, and who taught you to be scared of us? The words hang. No one moves. Even the cameras seem to lean in. The neighbor's lips tremble. No answer comes. Her silence fills the room louder than her denial. The groom straightens his tie. His voice calm. Groom, fear is not neutral when it always points in the same direction. The chamber falls quiet again. Reporters pause their scribbles. Some neighbors in the back nod slowly, shame in their faces. The chairwoman clears her throat once more. Chairwoman, we'll deliberate on the legal consequences. But one thing is clear. What happened that night cannot be undone. What remains is whether this community chooses to confront it or excuse it. The neighbor stares at the table. Her son leans back, arms crossed, his disappointment louder than words. The bride wipes a single tear, lifts her chin. Bride, quiet final. We don't need revenge. We need truth. The chamber holds its breath. That truth sits heavy, unavoidable. Session adjourns. No one claps, no one cheers. The silence itself delivers the verdict. The chamber is tighter tonight. Reporters sit closer, neighbors lean forward. The weight in the air is not just curiosity, it's expectation. The neighbor adjusts the microphone, her hands trembling. Her lawyer gives a small nod, urging her on. She swallows, then begins. Neighbor, I didn't know it was a wedding. I heard noise, voices. I thought. Her words stumble. She glances at the rows of faces watching her. Neighbor, I thought. Something dangerous was happening. I feared for safety. That's why I called. A hush spreads through the room, but it isn't sympathy. It's disbelief. The bride shakes her head slowly, her voice quiet but sharp. Bride, laughter isn't danger. Music isn't crime. The neighbor grips the table. Neighbor, but I didn't know. I couldn't see. Guest, interrupting. You could see. You saw chairs, flowers, people dressed in suits. You saw joy, and you still chose fear. The neighbor flinches. Her lawyer clears his throat, but the mayor raises his hand gently. Groom, let her finish. Let the excuses run their course. The neighbor's eyes flicker toward him, and for a moment her composure falters. Neighbor, quieter now. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was just concerned. The chamber reacts with low murmurs. Concern. The word rolls bitterly across the room. Bride, cutting through the noise. Concern isn't calling the police on joy. Concern is checking on your neighbor. Concern is knocking on the door. You didn't do that. You reached for punishment before kindness. The neighbor's lips tremble. Neighbor, I was scared. Guest from the back row. Scared of what? Of black people in tuxedos? Of families dancing? The neighbor's lawyer leans in, whispering harshly, but she doesn't respond. Her silence exposes more than her words. A witness from across the street stands to speak. Witness, I was there. I saw everything. There were no fights. No shouting beyond the music, no threat. The only thing unusual was that a black couple was celebrating where she could see them. The neighbor lowers her eyes. Groom, steady, calm. Fear is a mask, and masks slip when the truth is asked out loud. The neighbor grips the mic again, voice cracking. Neighbor, you don't understand. This neighborhood, it's changing. It doesn't feel the same anymore. The chamber stirs. That sentence lands heavier than any slip of the tongue. Bride, voice steady despite tears. It doesn't feel the same. Because we live here now. The neighbor looks away, her face reddening. Neighbor's son, quietly from her side. Mom, stop. Just stop. His whisper cuts deeper than any argument. She presses her lips together, fighting back words that will not save her. The groom straightens his papers, but doesn't raise his voice. Groom, there was no threat that night. The only danger was the one you created with a phone call. You turned a celebration into a scene, a wedding into a wound. The neighbor closes her eyes. Her hands shake against the table. She doesn't speak again. The silence stretches long. Even the reporters don't interrupt. Everyone feels the unraveling, not loud, not dramatic, but slow and visible. Like fabric pulled apart thread by thread. The chairwoman leans forward, voice measured. Chairwoman, the defense has been heard. But fear without reason cannot excuse the consequences it caused. This chamber will consider the testimony. Until then, the facts remain. She glances at the neighbor, then at the mayor. Chairwoman, joy was mistaken for threat. That is the truth no defense has erased tonight. The gavel strikes. The sound echoes, final and sharp. The bride exhales, holding her husband's hand. Neither smile. They don't need to. The silence says enough. The chamber empties slower tonight. Some neighbors linger by the doors, others whisper in corners. The weight of the last testimony still hangs in the air, the neighbor's defense unraveling in front of everyone. At the back, two white neighbors stand together, uneasy. They exchange glances, then one finally steps forward. His voice is low but clear. Neighbor 1, I need to say something. The room quiets again, though no gavel strikes. Eyes turn. His wife joins him, her hand pressed tightly to his arm. Neighbor 1, we've lived on that street for 15 years. We've seen families come and go. And we've seen what people don't say out loud. His words tremble, but he keeps going. Neighbor 1, when the Carters moved in, I heard things at the HOA meetings. Jokes that weren't jokes, comments that weren't innocent. And I didn't speak up. The bride blinks, eyes wet but steady. Bride, you let it happen. The neighbor nods, shame pressing his shoulders down. Neighbor 1, I did. We all did. We nodded along. We kept quiet. Silence was easier. His wife swallows hard, then steps closer to the mic. Neighbor 2, his wife. I told myself it wasn't my fight. I watched from my porch when stares lingered too long. I watched when invitations stopped reaching certain doors. And I said nothing. A guest from the wedding speaks up, bitter. Guest. Silence is how it survives. Prejudice doesn't need loud voices when it has quiet ones standing by. The neighbor's wife wipes at her eyes. Neighbor 2, you're right. And I'm ashamed. We let the fence between us grow thicker because we never tore it down ourselves. The groom doesn't move at first, his expression unreadable. Then he leans into the mic, his voice calm, even. Groom, you saw it, you knew, and you chose comfort over courage. Both neighbors nod. Their silence confirms more than words. Neighbor 1, we can't undo what we didn't say. But we can start saying it now. That call, it wasn't just her. It was all of us who stayed quiet while she thought she could. The chamber stirs. Some neighbors shift in their seats, uncomfortable. Others lower their eyes, a different white. Neighbor, older, clears her throat and speaks reluctantly. Neighbor 3. I used to cross the street instead of waving. I told myself it was nothing, but it was something. Every choice not to look, not to greet, it added up. Her voice cracks, Neighbor 3, and now here we are. The bride grips her husband's hand. She whispers, but the mic catches it. Bride. We shouldn't have to bleed for you to notice. The words cut through the chamber like a blade. No one argues. The older neighbor nods slowly, her face crumpling. Neighbor 3, you're right, we failed you. We failed ourselves too, because silence is offense, and we all hid behind it. The chamber holds its breath. For the first time, the shame isn't carried by one house, one woman. It's spread across many. The groom's voice steadies the silence. Groom, if you want to be allies, start at the fence. That's where it grows. That's where it festers. That's where it can end. His words settle like stone. The neighbors don't clap, don't cheer. They simply bow their heads. Quiet admissions hang heavier than apologies. The bride straightens, eyes glistening but firm. Bride, final, almost a whisper. Change doesn't start in chambers. It starts next door. The sentence lingers. The chamber adjourns. People shuffle out quietly, but for once, the silence carries the weight of truth, not avoidance. The story leaves the neighborhood. It leaves the chamber. By morning, it belongs to the country. On one channel, a commentator leans forward. Voice sharp. Commentator 1. Let's call it what it is, racism. A black man, a mayor, celebrating his wedding. And the police show up because a neighbor decides joy looks suspicious. Another panelist shakes his head. Commentator 2. Or was it just poor judgment? We can't read minds. Maybe the neighbor honestly thought there was a disturbance. The anchor interrupts, calm but firm. Anchor. Intent is not the same as impact. The impact was clear. A bride in tears, guests terrified, officers with their hands on their weapons. You can't erase that by saying you meant well. The screen splits. Flashing clips from the wedding, the council chamber. The press steps. At a diner across town. The television plays above the counter. Patrons murmur between bites. Customer 1. They're debating whether it was racist. If you have to ask, you already know the answer. Customer 2. Some people just don't want to admit it. Easier to call it a mistake than a pattern. The waitress pours coffee, glancing at the screen. Waitress. Funny how mistakes always point the same direction. Silence follows. Nobody argues. That evening, the mayor sits under studio lights. The bride sits beside him, her hand resting on his knee. The interviewer leans in. Interviewer. Mayor Carter, millions watch this unfold. Do you see it as racism or a misunderstanding? The mayor exhales slowly, his voice steady. Groom, what I see is this. If it can happen to me, an elected official, in daylight, surrounded by witnesses, what happens to those without a title, without cameras, without protection? The studio grows quiet. The interviewer lowers his pen. Interviewer. So you're saying this is bigger than one call? Groom, it always was. One call is never just one call. It's history repeating itself in a new voice. The bride adds softly, her voice breaking just enough to be heard. Bride, people laughed online. They made memes. But we lived it. We felt what it was like to have our love treated as a threat. That isn't a misunderstanding. The interviewer doesn't interrupt. Her words hang, raw and unpolished. Clips of that interview play the next day on news broadcasts. A pundit shakes his head. Commentator 3. Listen to the mayor's words. If this can happen to me, that should haunt us. Because it means the problem isn't the exception, it's the rule. Another voice pushes back. Commentator 4. But should we destroy a neighbor's life over one mistake? A pause follows. Then, Commentator 3, she made the call. But the system answered exactly the way she knew it would. That's not just her. That's all of us. In living rooms, in break rooms, in buses, the arguments echo. Is it racism? Is it fear? Is it ignorance? The questions spread, but the answer remains unspoken, heavy in the silence between debates. On the courthouse steps, the mayor speaks. To reporters again. Cameras flash, microphones press forward. His voice doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. Groom. We keep circling around intent. Intent doesn't matter when the impact leaves scars. My wife cried on her wedding day, not from joy, but from fear. Guests held their breath, not for vows, but for survival. That's the reality. He pauses, letting the silence carry weight. Groom. And I ask again, if this can happen to me, what happens to those without a title? Reporters fall quiet. The crowd shifts. Some lower their eyes. The words echo past the steps, past the microphones, into the spaces where silence once lived. The bride slips her hand into his. Cameras catch it, but no caption can carry what it means. The press conference ends. The questions remain. The neighbor sits stiff in a folding chair at the HOA meeting. The room is crowded, the air thick with judgment. Papers shuffle, coughs echo, but no one really looks at her. The HOA president clears his throat, his voice flat. President, we've reviewed the incident. Based on misuse of emergency services and disruption of community peace, Mrs. Whitman will pay fines and face temporary suspension of HOA privileges. Whispers rise around the room. The neighbor grips her purse tighter. Neighbor, suspension? For what? Calling the police. A man from the back row leans forward. Resident 1. For turning your prejudice into everyone else's problem. Her lips part, but no words come. President, this isn't just about the call. It's about the damage it did. To the community. To trust. The neighbor shakes her head. Defensive. Neighbor, you're all turning on me. Like I'm the only one who ever complained. A woman speaks up, arms crossed. Resident 2, but you made the call. And the world saw it. We're the ones left explaining to our kids why neighbors treat each other like enemies. The neighbor's son sits beside her, staring down at his shoes. He doesn't defend her. The mayor and his bride enter quietly. The room shifts, eyes following them. They don't speak at first. Their presence is enough. The bride finally breaks the silence. Bride, you think the fine is the consequence. But the real consequence is that my wedding photos are stamped with fear. That our neighbor's children learn to see police cars as part of celebration. Her words sting sharper than any penalty. Neighbor, I didn't mean bride, cutting. In calm but cold, you did. You chose suspicion over a simple knock on the door. The neighbor's lawyer starts to speak, but the mayor raises a hand, silencing the room with quiet authority. Groom. Laws will punish the act, but laws can't restore what was broken. Trust doesn't return with receipts. A father in the crowd nods, his young daughter perched on his knee. He speaks softly, but the room hears. Father, my girl asked me if the police would come if we had a birthday party. What answer do I give her? The neighbor closes her eyes. The room grows still. Later, in the parking lot, clusters of families linger. Resident 3, the fines don't fix it. Resident 4, no, the kids saw it. That's what will last. The bride walks past them, hand in her husband's. People part to make way. Some nod in apology, some in shame. The mayor stops briefly, turning to face the group. Groom, what happened isn't just on one person. It's on everyone who watched the fence grow and said nothing. The fine is hers. The lesson is ours. No one answers. The silence says enough. That night, the neighbor sits alone at her kitchen table. The envelope with the HOA penalty lies unopened. Her son finally speaks, voice flat. Son, you didn't just call the cops on them. You called them on all of us. Now everyone pays for it. She stares at him, her defense gone. Neighbor, I didn't think. Son, you never do. Not about them. He leaves the room. She stays frozen, the silence heavier than any punishment written on paper. The true consequence spreads quietly, in whispers at school, in glances over fences, in children asking questions parents can't answer. Fines are paid, privileges suspended. But the wound remains. And wounds don't close with rules. They close with truth. Something the community is only just beginning to learn. The house is quiet now. The chairs are folded, the music silenced, the lawn empty except for petals crushed into the grass. The bride sits on the couch, her bouquet wilting in her lap. She doesn't look at the flowers. She looks at the photos spread across the table. Bride, softly. They don't look like weddings. They look like evidence. The groom sits across from her, scrolling through the same photos on his phone. In one, he's holding her hand. In the background, officers stand stiff, eyes scanning. In another, she's clutching her bouquet, face streaked with tears. Groom. It's both. Evidence and a wedding. She shakes her head, voice catching. Bride. Every time I see them, I feel that silence again. The way everything stopped, like joy wasn't allowed to exist. He leans forward, his voice lower, steady. Groom. Joy itself is resistance. That's what these photos show. That even with fear circling, we stood. The bride runs her thumb over an image, her hand trembling. Bride. Do you think people will see that, or will they just see the pain? Groom. They'll see both, and maybe that's the truth of it. Love and prejudice, same day, same picture. The door creaks. A guest from the wedding steps in, carrying an envelope of printed photos. He lays them gently on the table. Guest. I thought you should have these. I developed them myself. No filters, just what was. The bride hesitates before opening them. The first picture shows her laughing during the vows. The second, moments later, shows her face frozen as the cruiser pulled up. She presses the stack to her chest, eyes filling. Bride. Two different stories, but both are mine. The guest nods, quiet. Guest. When I look through them, I realize something. Every face in those frames. They all carry both fear and resilience. You gave us both. The groom looks at him sharply. Groom. We didn't give you fear. Guest, after a pause. No, that was already waiting for us. But you showed us how to carry it without breaking. The bride exhales shakily. Bride. I don't want to be strong every day. I just wanted to be a bride. Her words sit heavy in the room. No one speaks. Finally, the groom reaches across, lifting her hand from the bouquet and holding it tightly. Groom. You still are. The silence after carries more than reassurance. It carries the weight of survival turned into love. Later. That evening, a group of guests gather in the kitchen. Cups of coffee in hand, their voices low but firm. Guest 2. I keep thinking of my kids. They saw all of it. How do I explain that? That even the mayor isn't safe at his own wedding? Guest 3. You tell them this is why we don't look away. That's the lesson now. The bride enters, her eyes red, but her posture straighter. She listens for a moment, then speaks. Bride. Tell them this, we got married. Despite everything. That joy doesn't stop because someone tries to steal it. That's the part they need to remember. The guests nod. One whispers almost to himself. Guest 4. Resilience blooms whether they like it or not. The words linger. When the last guest leaves, the bride and groom stand alone at the window, looking out into the quiet street. Bride. Softly. Do you think they'll ever see us as just neighbors? The groom wraps his arm around her shoulders. Groom. Maybe not, but they'll see us. And sometimes, that's the beginning. They stand in silence, the weight of the day pressed into their shoulders, but beneath it, something steadier grows, a vow beyond the vows, a marriage that begins not in peace, but in defiance. Months had passed. The wedding photos had yellowed at the edges of memory, but the wound they carried had not. The community now spoke differently, in meetings, in classrooms, even across fences. The mayor sat at a long table in City Hall, facing not politicians, but neighbors, neighbor one. So now, if someone calls the police because they feel uncomfortable, and it's racially motivated, there's a fine? Council member, yes, a heavy one. We can't undo what happened, but we can make sure weaponizing fear has consequences. A silence settled. Some nodded slowly, others looked down. The mayor leaned forward, his voice quieter than usual. Mayor, it shouldn't take a wedding for us to learn this. His words hung. Across the room, a teacher raised her hand, her voice steady but rough. Teacher, my students. They ask me why people lie to the police about families like theirs. I used to dodge it. Now I tell them the truth. Prejudice lives here, but we get to choose what grows after. The mayor watched her, feeling both gratitude and sorrow. In the school gym, weeks later, a forum gathered parents, students, and residents. Folding chairs scraped the floor. Children whispered in the back rows. A mother spoke first. Mother, when my daughter saw that video of the wedding, she asked me, will they call the police on us too? I had no answer. I want a better answer now. Her voice cracked. The gym was silent, save for the hum of the lights. The mayor, seated near the stage, spoke without rising. Mayor, the answer has to be no. Not just in words, but in laws, in classrooms, in how we treat each other on this block. A father in. The audience raised his voice. Father, but laws don't change hearts. What then? The mayor looked at him for a long moment. Mayor, then we keep showing up, again and again, until silence feels heavier than speaking. Narration drifts softly, and so the incident became more than memory. It became curriculum, policy, debate. The insult turned into questions children would carry into adulthood. What does justice look like here? Whose voice matters when the call is made? At another gathering, this time outside on a warm evening, neighbors circled in lawn chairs. The woman whose call began it all sat on the edge of the group, her hands twisted in her lap. For weeks she had been silent. Tonight she spoke, neighbor, hesitant. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood. That's what I told myself, but really, I was protecting my fear. I see that now. No one rushed to comfort her. The silence that followed was not cruel, but clear. Finally, an older man leaned in. Older man. Then the question is, what do you do with that? Now? Her eyes filled, but she nodded. Neighbor, I listen. I don't call. I sit with the fear until it shrinks. A quiet ripple moved through the circle. No applause, no absolution. Just the sound of folding chairs shifting on grass. Weeks later, the mayor stood before a class of middle schoolers. A boy raised his hand. Boy, sir, when they called the cops on you, were you scared? The mayor paused. He looked at their faces, wide-eyed, waiting. Mayor, softly. Yes, but I was also tired. Tired of proving I belonged in my own home. That's why change matters. So one day, none of you are asked to prove it. The class was quiet. Then a girl whispered, not to him but to the boy beside her. Girl, that's not fair. We shouldn't have to be scared like that. The mayor heard her. He let the words rest in the room, uncorrected, unsoftened. Because they were true. Narration returns. Policy was written, yes. Penalties were set. But the deeper shift was slower, quieter. The way neighbors looked longer at each other before speaking. The way teachers answered harder questions. The way children repeated what they saw. Dignity carried without shouting. At a final town forum, someone asked from the back of the hall. Voice. What happens when the next call is made? The mayor didn't answer immediately. He let the room breathe. Let every ear lean closer. Then he said only this, Mayor, the question isn't whether there will be a call. The question is, when it comes, what side will you be on? The words echoed, not as threat but as invitation. A hush fell. And in that hush lived the truth. The incident was never just about one wedding, one call, one family. It was about a fence line the whole community had to cross.